Hi, I'm Kyle.
And I'm Julie.
This session is getting a grip on your emotions. The first session of Couple Talk Part 2, Cracking the Code to Handling Conflict.
For some of you who took a bit of a break between the final session of Part 1 and this session, I say welcome back. For others of you, this is the 6th session of the 10-session program you are going through from beginning to end. And I say good to see you again.
And for any of you that skipped Part 1 and are starting your first session with Couple Talk Part 2, go back to Part 1. Part 2 builds upon everything that we learned in Part 1. Sessions 6 through 10 build upon the foundation laid in sessions 1 through 5.
Think of the worst moments in your relationship with your partner. Whatever it was, you probably remember it in vivid detail. And more than likely, your emotions got the best of you on that day and probably made a bad situation even worse.
It's happened to all of us.
When people get married, they think they are on the expressway to happily ever after. But for many of us couples, somewhere along the way, a season of life reality check forces us to take a pit stop from our fairy tale ending. You find yourself in what feels like a hopelessly never happy relationship and don't know how to change it.
Strong emotions and feelings kick in and can make things seem even worse. We went through a season like that. It's no fun and at the time felt impossible to overcome.
In today's session, Don and Alex give practical ways for couples to avoid making a bad situation worse.
I wish we had learned this stuff before going through what we went through. Thankfully, Couple Talk has helped us avoid getting anywhere close to those dark moments in our marriage.
I totally agree with you. So pull out your workbook, turn to the Getting a Grip on Your Emotions section, and get ready to take some notes that you will refer to again and again.
Here's Don and Alex Flecky.
Welcome to Part 2 of Couple Talk, Cracking the Code to Handling Conflict. This first session is getting a grip on your emotions. We're glad to be back, sharing this segment on handling problems and conflict, lingering hurts. Doesn't sound fun, but if you're going to be happy and growing closer for life, you've got to deal with it. So now we'll turn our focus to handling things when we get into conversations that seem to go downhill. You'll be learning some really good practical stuff that you can use in everyday life.
And we'll be doing it using those core values we told you about in the first session of Couple Talk. Remember, there was being open and honest with our partner, but also being caring and compassionate. And then finally, that third value was commitment, which means commitment to the relationship. What I want as an individual or what Don wants as an individual is not as important as what our marriage needs.
But remember, it's practice that leads to new behaviors and new habits. So be ready to practice, just like Part 1.
Everything you learned in Part 1, you'll be using in Part 2. You remember in Trading Places, Session 1, you learned how to look at things from your partner's point of view. In Session 2, Listening Fully, you learned about listening with empathy, where you started by having the attitude that was open and accepting, and then you listened in a way that showed strong interest, making that eye contact, knee to knee. And then you set your own views aside and you became your partner, imagining having your partner's experience. And then as you started to talk and summarize back with empathy, you named your partner's thoughts and feelings and concerns and desires. And then if your partner taught you something new or corrected you, you accepted those corrections graciously and named them back. And remember, we use the I form of listening with empathy in here, where I speak as if I am Dawn. I speak as if I'm my partner. So if Dawn were expressing to me, then when it's my turn to listen with empathy, I would say, as Dawn, I think such and such. I feel this. I'm concerned about.
And then you moved on to expressing yourself. Prepared first to think before you speak about what's good in your partner's position. Then you began by telling your partner what's good. You talked from your own point of view. You talked about your thoughts, your feelings, values, hopes. You told them everything you wanted to tell them. You avoided trigger words. So let's look at a couple of video clips of unhealthy messages, and we'll turn them into healthy I messages.
There you go again. Whenever we fight, you always blame me.
So it's clear there that he's sending a message back. But if he was to say that in a skillful way, he could say,
When we disagree, I often feel blame.
you see the difference, okay? Again, we talked about that earlier in an earlier session, but want to review that again. Let's look at another example.
All you ever want to do is watch TV.
Okay? Blaming, accusing a little bit. All right. Let's hear if she says the same content, the same meaning, but in a skillful way.
I would like it if we can spend some time together without the TV on.
Okay? You catch that difference? Okay, just a little reminder about in expressing ourselves skillfully, speaking from our own point of view.
In the fourth session, having a couple talk, you put the two roles together to have a discussion. One of you began expressing, and you used an expression stick, and the other person was in the role of listening with empathy. And I am the expressor here in this instance, and then Don's role is to listen with empathy. And if Don would like a turn to express himself, he can ask for a turn using a nonverbal signal. And then after he listens with empathy to the last thing I said, I give him the expression stick, and now he is the expressor. And then after a while, if we're in this kind of a situation where Don is the expressor and he'd like to give me a chance to express myself, he can just offer me the stick, and I'm ready then to become the expressor.
And we ended part one by giving you ideas for growing as a team. We hope that you're feeding and nourishing your relationship with regular times together.
And this session, getting a grip on your emotions, is an important set of strategies for handling conflict. So we are going to cover a number of practical steps that you can take. For instance, if anger is getting a hold of you and taking over, or if you are just beginning to get tense and irritated. We have a saying for you. These skills are like seat belts. They only work if you use them. So we want to point out the fact that you can know these skills and know about these skills, but if you don't use them, they're not going to work for you. So you must get in the practice of using them. And when your emotions get you off track into some unskillful or disrespectful behavior, get back on track by using the skills. And we can get a grip on our emotions and do that. And that's what we'll be doing in this session.
In your workbook, there are two statements. One is, if someone does something just too awful and I lose it, it's not my fault. Or, no matter what buttons are pushed, my actions are my responsibility. Which do you believe? Which do you act like you believe? No matter what people do to push our buttons, how we behave when we're frustrated or angry is our responsibility. We'll talk a bit about conflict now. Conflict, like anger, is inevitable. We're going to see things differently. We're going to have differences.
There was a study done of hundreds of couples over a number of years. And what they found was that the couples that they interviewed who said that they had no conflicts were the ones who years later were all divorced. So saying we don't have any conflicts it's really just not true. Because if you think of conflicts as differences, well then any two individuals are going to have some differences. So couples who were trying to avoid getting into conflicts and addressing differences ended up with significant severe problems later on.
So conflict is normal And if we have trouble and differences, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with us or something wrong with our relationship. In fact, it can be healthy. We grow a lot through conflict and through the differences that have to be worked out. So anger is normal, feeling hurt from time to time is normal, fear is normal, and all of those things can be healthy for us. And our response to those can all be skillful.
Now, when you're in a conflict with someone and you start to feel angry or hurt, how do you react? Generally, there are two ways that people tend to react, two typical reactions. The first one is fight, attack. Can't let that issue go. Have to deal with it right now. I am an attacker.
Yes, she is.
Yes. And others, on the other side of the spectrum, take the flight mode. They want to avoid. It's sort of like this, can't we just get along? We're getting along well, let's not talk about it. It feels too uncomfortable, it'll bring up problems. So what you can see is both sides of that spectrum can cause harm in a relationship. If I'm attacking, I may drag our relationship down. But if he's avoiding, he may not be addressing issues that we need to address in our relationship. So no matter what side of the spectrum you might find yourself falling on, you can use these techniques you'll learn in this session.
And we'll present these techniques using the word picture of a traffic light. Red are things you can do when you or your partner are out of control. Yellow are things you can do to stay in control when you need to proceed cautiously. And green is when the conflict is over to get back on track more quickly. So first, getting a grip when you're in the red zone. What is the red zone? That's when one or both of you can no longer stay skillful. And we'll use that word skillful as we're describing these techniques and skills.
But think about how you express yourself when you are very, very angry and out of control with your anger. It's those you messages, it's the attacks perhaps, it's those judgmental, disrespectful words. It can also be wanting to run and avoid. So when you're in the red zone, it could be one of those two things happening.
So recognize those signs when you're in the red zone. Your feelings are just too intense and you're noticing it. In fact, we'd like you to consider each of you individually, what signs do you notice when you get angry? What do you feel in your body? What changes happen? And we want you to become aware of those signs.
So tell them what you feel when you're getting angry.
I feel my stomach gets churning and my jaw kind of gets hard, when I'm mad. And because I have that avoider thing, I don't, want to say stuff. I guess I'm holding it in or something like that.
Yeah, and for me, I'm really different. If I'm angry, I know it because words are coming out of my mouth. And I'm saying something that I, have to be very careful of. So you may have your own particular signs of anger, and we want you to become aware of them.
So red zone is when you're flooded and there's so much emotion that you're not sure that you are going to be able to behave in the way that you should.
And here's what you do when you find yourself in the red zone. You take a time out. And research verifies the wisdom of taking a break when you are in this red zone of being flooded with anger. There was a study done of real couples and real arguments. And the way the study was conducted was they brought couples into a room where they asked them to just talk about a normal conflict issue. So they wired them up with heart rate monitors and monitored their heart rate as they were having their regular natural conflict, and they were videotaping them. And when their heart rate got above a certain point, I think it was 10% above normal heart rate, that half of the couples were stopped and told, you know what, our videotape machine broke down. Sorry about that. Just read some magazines here or talk about other things, but don't talk anymore about your conflict. And they gave them about a 30-minute break until their heart rate went down to normal. And then they came back in and they said, you know what, our videotape machine is fixed, so go ahead and resume your discussion. And then they continued their videotaping, and they compared those couples who had had the 30-minute break with the couples who did not get that break. And those couples who had the break worked out their issues significantly more healthily. So this is research verified advice. And there are 4 steps to a timeout. First, call a timeout using a timeout signal or phrase. Right. So sometimes couples decide to use a nonverbal signal that just says, got to take a break right now.
This is sports, so it's kind of natural to do that, yeah.
Could be, yeah. I have a timeout signal I use, which is actually a phrase, because I have a tendency to use words in disrespectful ways. So we have had conflicts where what I say to Don is 2 hours. And that says to him that I am going to go and do what I need to do for 2 hours, which is calm down. And Don knows that it's a good idea not to pursue me and say, no, why don't we keep talking about it, right? So you can use your own personal signal or phrase. And it's really a wonderful thing if you can include some reassurance. Like, Don, I think I need to take a time out. We'll work this out later. I need some time to calm down. So you see, just having a touch and a good tone of voice and saying, I'd like to have a timeout, I'll be a better listener.
I'll feel better.
Right, so he would feel better about that. He wouldn't feel like I'm abandoning him. He would feel like I do want to work it out and I'm going to go prepare to be a better partner by taking a break. And that second step is take time to calm down. There are examples in your workbook, make your timeout count. And these are a list of strategies that match research on stress management. So it lists a bunch of different ideas that people have used to calm down. Some of them are active, like running, going to the gym, pulling weeds. Some of them are more passive or slower, like maybe journaling or praying or taking a hot bath. So we'd like you right now to take a few moments to look over making your timeout count and mark a couple of the options that you could choose when you are in the red zone.
Time's up. Excellent job. Let's turn back towards Don and Alex.
Okay, the third point is take time to reflect. Reflect. Look at the reflections during timeout in your workbook. When you can calmly answer these questions, then you're ready to talk. Is it really anger? How intense is my anger? Is it only anger, or are there other feelings that might be masked, such as hurt or fear? And then finally, keep the appointment to talk. When you call a timeout, it's very important that whatever time you agree to come back and talk with your partner about the issue, you keep that appointment.
Early in our marriage, when I was having so many problems with being the attacker, there was one time that I thought, this isn't a good thing to do. So I remember we were driving in the car and I said, I'm really angry about this, but I don't think I should talk about it now. Can we talk about it later when I'm calmer? And Don was really excited about that, and he said, sure.
Yeah.
So I remember the next day I came to him and I said, hey, you know what? I'm ready to talk now about that issue. And your response was,
why do we have to do that? We're getting along so well now.
Now you see what happened there was I was ready to talk and he was doing the avoiding. And so what happened was then I started thinking, I've got to just push then and keep at these conflicts because he may end up doing that again. So remember, if your partner calls a timeout, respect their request, and then when it's time to talk, both of you have to come back and keep that commitment to talk.
If you're an avoider like me, you got to deal with it. And if you don't deal with it, then your partner won't trust that you'll talk later next time. Turn in your workbook to the exercise called Share Your Partner's Burden. In this exercise, you will vent. You'll talk about your feelings, your thoughts, your worries about a situation that frustrated or angered you. Your partner will listen and summarize with empathy. And your partner will not do any fixing, no solutions, no giving of opinions, no commenting or asking questions. Your partner just empathizes with your experience, just steps into your world and connects. And they'll give empathy in the I form.
Now the topic that you will choose for this exercise cannot involve your partner directly and cannot involve your partner's blood relatives. So that means you cannot vent about your father-in-law or your brother-in-law, and you cannot vent about your children. So we're going to do a demonstration now, and Don has something he's going to vent about. It has nothing to do with me. I probably wasn't even there, and he's going to vent, and I'm going to listen with empathy. We'll do a few turns, and then have you do this exercise.
Okay. And I'll be venting, so I'll hold the expression stick. I just want to vent a little bit about something that happened just the other day. I pride myself on being a guy who can find my way anywhere and knows where I'm at all the time. And I was driving, and because of some construction, I missed a turn and went the opposite direction from where I was supposed to go. And I didn't realize it for quite a while, went probably 10 miles out of the way. It happened to be a time when I was in a hurry and needed to get somewhere.
So as Don, I am a really good driver, and I know my way around really well. The kids even still call me up and say, how can I get somewhere? And I have to give them directions really quickly. And so I was on the freeway, and what happened was there was some construction in the way, and there were some signs that somehow maybe were out of place, and so I ended up not where I was expecting to go.
Yeah, I made a wrong turn and ended up going like 10 miles out of the way when I was under pressure for time and needed to be somewhere. And then I had to turn around and go back the other 10 miles just to catch where I had missed the turn, and was late to where I wanted to go. And that was really a frustration for me on a bunch of levels.
So as Don, I went out of my way, and then I had to find my way back, and it made me late, and I was really frustrated, and part of it is because I am never somebody who has this happen to this kind of thing happen to them. And so here I am coming in and saying, I got lost, I got mixed up, and so there's a bit of an ego hit here because I'm capable. This is my area of expertise, and I really fouled up.
Yeah, you got it. That's right. I expect to do better than that, and when I didn't, it was embarrassing, and having to be late was embarrassing as well.
So as Don, I ended up feeling embarrassed because this is just not an area I'm weak in, and so that was a real frustration.
Yeah, thanks.
Good. Okay, so you saw Don demonstrate one side, and then it would be my turn to then take the expression stick and vent about something that was frustrating me.
So now it's your turn. We want you to choose a topic, and each of you will vent to the other. And we would like you to turn your chairs so that you're facing each other knee to knee, and we'll let you know when we're halfway through. We'll let you know when there's a minute left, and the music will come up as it's time to return to the group. Ready, go.
All right, let's take a moment to practice what we've learned.
Turn and face each other so you're knee to knee.
Go to the page numbers shown on the screen and begin the exercise.
you're halfway done. If you haven't done so already, it's time to switch roles. You've got just one more minute.
Time to return to the group. Don and Alex are getting ready to start up again.
Okay, we're going to have you go into your workbook and reflect on a couple of questions. What if your partner could or would give you the gift of empathy whenever you asked for it? How would that change things? Okay, go ahead and write in your book. We'll give you a minute for that.
On your own, complete the quick debrief.
Now we'd like to hear a bit from you. How was this venting exercise? How'd that go? Tia?
I liked it because I can vent a lot, and I tend to just like have all these words spewing and go on for minutes, and then sometimes he'll understand me and he's listening, but he won't really say anything. So then it makes me feel like I'm not being listened to, and then I get upset about it. So the fact that they have to repeat it back and listen and engage, like I just feel like now we're in this together instead of me just saying all these things and not having anything like afterwards.
Yeah. Sarah?
I liked it because I was able to process some emotions that I didn't realize that I had. So sometimes I don't even understand the cause of my feelings or even what I'm feeling. So allowing me to speak and then him repeating it back to me, I can get at the root of the issue.
Nice.
And research shows that when you have like strong feelings, like angry feelings, venting to someone like this and being listened to with empathy can actually help to calm your feelings. So you can have your feelings calmed through an exercise like this, but it sounds like what you're saying is you also kind of learned about new feelings. You learned about other feelings that you hadn't even really discovered yet were really going on inside of you. Yeah, great.
Thomas?
Yeah, I know with myself, I personally don't vent very often, and part of that is because a lot of the times when I do actually vent, I don't feel heard because she wants to know more or asks a lot of questions, does some interrupting, and so sometimes I cut my thought processes or my my actual wanting to vent, I cut it short. And so this allows me to get everything that I want to say out into the open and allows her to understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
There are times when our partner is venting about something that made them angry or hurt or frustrated. And it's really difficult to listen and not try to comfort them or give them advice. As a parent, I know when I hear my child in pain I want to tell them maybe if you did this, you wouldn't have that situation come up again and you wouldn't be in pain. And so sometimes our impulse is to comfort or give advice because we don't like seeing our partner in pain. But walking through the process of helping them feel their feelings actually is a gift that you can give to them that can help them lessen their feelings even more than maybe interrupting and trying to give them advice or sympathy or comfort.
Yeah. Imagine your partner's just come home from work from a terrible day. Wouldn't it be a sweet gift to give to them if you were just available to let them vent, let them share their rough day, tell you about it, and not have them hear you criticize or advise or say, well, why didn't, or, question what was going on? I mean, it's a sweet, incredible gift that we can give to each other because we all have times like that. And now you know how to do it. You have the ability now to give that gift to each other. And remember not to give advice or start asking too many questions about it unless that's where the conversation goes when your partner has calmed down. We're not trying to stifle that opportunity to talk about something or ask questions, but this is a venting exercise, an opportunity for you to let your partner to unload, help them unload those frustrations, those feelings. So once they've unloaded them, then you have your time to talk. Ask questions, do that. So turn to your partner and take 1 minute and share your answers to those questions that you wrote in the workbook. Go.
Turn and talk to your partner about how this exercise was for you.
Now we're going to turn to another important time when you need to get a grip on your emotions.
And this is when you are in the yellow zone. And that is a time when you feel things getting tense or you're irritated and you want to proceed cautiously. So what do you do when you find yourself in the yellow zone? You're getting frustrated inside and irritated, and you have this idea that things may not go so well right now. If we don't do something, our conversation might be going downhill. Well, the first thing you can do is let your partner know by using a yellow zone signal or phrase. And what you can do is create a signal between the two of you that lets you know that there's a little bit of irritation going on inside of you. You perhaps are starting to feel a little disrespected, and you both need to kind of proceed real cautiously. So you can even just say, I'm in the yellow zone. You could just use that. A couple of times Dawn and I have used that. I said to you, if you're not out of the shower soon, I'm going to be in the yellow zone. But I actually used, years ago, I used another phrase, and that's the one I use more often. If I find myself in a situation where I'm starting to have trouble managing my emotions, and Don doesn't know it, I'll say to him, Don, I'm feeling short. And he knows that is not a time to tease me, that I'm under 5'4". He knows that means all I want to do is give short answers to you right now, and so it's not a good time to get into something that might be a little sensitive. Let's be alert to being respectful of each other.
When that happens, I know my job is to get out of the way. Just stop bugging you, don't talk to you, just stay back, go in the other room. Yeah. So when you recognize you're getting irritated, you're in the yellow zone, there are a couple of things you can do. Respect is something we should do for our partners 100% of the time. There's not a time when we should be disrespectful. 24/7, all the time, respect. Even when you feel your partner doesn't deserve it or you're upset with them, be respectful.
So remember, even if you are angry, show respect. Even if you're in a bad mood, show respect. And third, think about when you get tense or irritated. What feeling is inside of you? Are you feeling angry, or is it because you're feeling offended, or you're hurt, or you're feeling devalued in some way? We'll give you a moment to write that feeling that puts you into the yellow zone. Write it down, and that will be your signal to you to become aware of giving your partner this yellow zone signal when you're feeling that feeling. So just take a moment. And let me just tell you, for me, it's hurt. If I'm feeling hurt, I'm in that yellow zone, and it's really a good idea for me to give Dawn that signal. So just take a few moments and write that feeling.
Now we have an exercise called Respect in Conflict. What happens when the two of you have conflict? What things do you do and say to each other? Which of those things help and feel respectful to you, or which of them cause you to feel disrespected?
In your workbook, there's a list of typical behaviors that happen during conflict. For instance, loud voice, screaming, interrupting, hurtful humor, walking away, giving unwanted advice, you statements, withdrawing. So some of these signals or some of these behaviors are nonverbal, like rolling of your eyes or walking out of the room. Other ones are verbal, like sarcasm or trigger words. So we'd like you to look over that list of behaviors just to become familiar with the kinds of things that happen during conflict.
And the purpose of the exercise is for you to have a couple talk about what feels respectful or disrespectful to you in conflict. And we're going to do a demonstration now.
So I will demonstrate by talking about my point of view when we have a conflict. So let me get the expression stick, and I'll say, when I think about times that we have a conflict, have disagreements, something that you do that causes me to feel respected is when you make eye contact with me as I'm talking about my point of view.
So as Alex, I feel respected when we have conflict. I feel respected when you make eye contact.
And as I think about times we have conflict and we're in a disagreement, something that you do that causes me to feel disrespected is when I hear you use the word should. You know, that I should do something, or I should believe something, or act in some way. And I end up feeling controlled by that.
So in those times of conflict, as Alex, it bothers me when you tell me should, that I should do something. And that makes me feel like I'm being controlled.
Mm-hmm. Right. So when it comes to having conflict or disagreement, something that I would like for you to do, or a couple of things, would be to continue doing that good eye contact. That's important to me. And then also to change the should to something like, you know, I think of it this way, or I prefer, or I wonder if you do such and such. An I message like that. That would, I think, really help that reaction that I have that's negative when I hear that.
So what would help for me in conflict is to keep doing the eye contact. I like that. But instead of the should, to replace that with I suggest or I'd like it if. And that would really take away that feeling of being controlled.
Great, right. So that's an example of one turn. And then what Don would do is write down the things he learned that he can do to show respect. So there's a place in your workbook for him, for your partner, the one who's been listening with empathy, to write down the things they've learned about what to do in the next conflict and in your conflicts to show respect.
So now it's your turn. We're going to ask you to have that kind of a dialogue together. So we'll have you turn your chairs and face each other knee to knee. We'll give you some time on the clock and let you know when it's a minute away and then when it's time to come back to the group. Ready, go.
Turn knee to knee with your partner and start the exercise.
You're halfway done.
This is the final minute, so begin wrapping it up. Time to return to the group. We're getting ready to start up again.
okay, we're going to have you mark in your workbook. Reflect on how you feel after doing this exercise. This may have been a little sensitive. So mark in your workbook. We'll give you a minute to do that.
Look at your workbook and mark the debrief on your own.
Okay. One thing I'd like to note here is that you may have discovered this yourselves. For one person, one particular behavior feels disrespectful, and that same behavior doesn't feel disrespectful to the other person. For instance, interruptions is an example for us. I don't mind if Don interrupts me when we're having a disagreement. Actually, it feels like he's...
I couldn't resist.
It feels like he's engaged with me, you know? And so it's like, yeah, sure, we're having this conversation, interrupt, it's no big deal. That's not on my list of behaviors that make me feel disrespected, but it is on his list. And so just because I don't mind being interrupted doesn't mean that I don't have to be alert to times when I'm interrupting him. So I have to monitor myself and show that kind of respect to him when he asks for me not to interrupt him. So that's on his list of behaviors that he would like me to change. And I'm still trying to do that, right?
Okay, so now we'd like to take a minute and find out how that exercise was for you. Yeah, you were talking about conflict, might have been a little bit tough, so we'd like to hear from some of you. Okay, Lee.
At first, I felt kind of bad because it's a personal thing between me and someone who I really love. I really don't want to hurt her feelings, so that's always really tough for me. But after doing it and having her listen to me and really show empathy, it really takes a lot of stress off of my shoulders, and it makes me want to be more open and be more honest with her.
Beautiful. Yeah. Others? Jarrell.
For me, it's difficult to kind of dig up those emotions and to think back to conversations or conflicts and to think like she's saying that this is offensive to her or this hurts her, and like to know that I'm doing something that causes that. But also it's very helpful because in the moment of the conflict, you don't want to hear that these things are hurtful. So it's like we're not like arguing right now, so it's easy to kind of bring that up so that you can kind of be preemptive about it in the future.
Take care of it ahead of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, others? Oh, Bobo.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing, that when you are in the moment, you know, you can name those things pretty easily, and you're doing that, but it just really gets the fire going even more. But when we're apart from that, we can really dissect it and talk about it respectfully and identify the things that maybe we didn't even notice, especially looking at this list. It brings up a lot of different things that we weren't aware of.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, Sarah.
You know, I felt a little frustrated reminding myself of what bothers me. Nothing about our exercise, but just being reminded of something that bothers me in our relationship. I felt the feelings coming up quite quickly.
Yeah, and I can understand that. You're saying that, you know, hey, we aren't in a conflict, and now we have to talk about that, and it brings up some bad feelings. It reminds you of the time you were hurt and that sort of thing. But the good news is that you have identified some things that hopefully then will not cause the negative feelings later when you are in a conflict. So as difficult as this is, it was planned for you to talk about what it's like to have a conflict when you aren't in a conflict. So just take encouragement from that. You know. Mm-hmm.
Any other experiences? Oh, Callie.
So talking about these behaviors not in an actual conflict really put a lot more weight on them. So in a conflict, I wouldn't feel that my interruption was as bad as it was, but to talk about it not in a conflict, I feel so bad about interrupting him. And so it just, puts more weight on the actual action.
Yeah. So it helped you to talk about it when it wasn't in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now take a minute and talk to your partner about how that exercise was for you. Ready, go.
Go ahead and talk to your partner.
To the green zone. That's when you're feeling calm and you're ready to talk about the issue. Number one is keep talking. Keep your appointment to talk after a timeout.
And I'm glad you're the one who is saying that.
That's right, yeah. Well, I tried getting away from it and I couldn't do it. So now you have to keep the appointment. Number two, reconnect if you are feeling distant after a difficult couple talk. Sometimes you resolve an issue, but there are lingering negative feelings that are still there. What do you do about that? What you can do is to reconnect and reaffirm your commitment to each other.
In your workbook are some statements that you can choose to help you reconnect. For instance, there could be appreciations. You could appreciate your partner's effort at listening to you or at being open during your couple talk. There could be apologizing that you do. You could maybe apologize if you did say a trigger word or if something was hurtful that you said. You could reaffirm your commitment to continue talking. It could be something like, this has been difficult and we may not be over with this couple talk, and I'm committed to really working all the way through it. And I just want you to know that I'm committed, and when we can schedule our next couple talk, let's take this topic up again.
Yeah, so those are techniques, strategies to use when you're in the green zone. Things are going well.
So we've been cracking the code to handling conflict. And we've been learning to get a grip on our emotions in this session. So what did you learn? You learned about what to do when you're in the red zone. Take that time out. When you are in the yellow zone, give your partner a heads up. Say, I'm in the yellow zone, or whatever you've chosen to say to alert them.
Or I'm short.
Or I'm short, right. You also learned in that exercise respect and conflict. So you know what behaviors make your partner feel respected, and you know what behaviors make your partner feel disrespected. And then the green zone. Keep your appointment for your couple talk after a timeout. And you were also given some helps to reconnect if you are feeling distant. So doing these things will end up building confidence between the two of you that you can handle any issue.
And cracking the code in everyday life. In your workbook, you'll see The goal is making conflict a matter of differences of perspective rather than war. Differences of perspective.
So it's war if it's like this, and it's only like this. It's differences of perspective if we take turns looking over each other's shoulders and working through the issue that way.
To do this, remember two things. Control your emotions. Don't let them control you. And your response is your responsibility. And now we've spent a whole session talking about conflict and maybe some difficult things. Let's take time now to give each other appreciations. So we'll ask you to turn your chairs toward each other so you're sitting knee to knee, and each of you give an appreciation to the other. And I'll give you a quick review. This is where you tell your partner something that you admire or appreciate about them, or something they've done for you recently, and they will summarize back with empathy using the you form. You appreciate that I such and such. Okay? And then after that's done, you'll reverse roles and your partner will give an appreciation to you. All right? So turn your chairs and give each other some appreciation.
Get knee to knee with each other and start the exercise.
You're halfway there. Turn back to the video. We're getting ready to start.
Well, we've begun cracking the code to handling conflict. In this session, you learned about getting a grip on your emotions.
And the next session will be digging deeper during disagreements. So we'll see you next time.
This session should be a prerequisite for every couple getting married.
I absolutely agree with you.
To recap, getting a grip on your emotions. When conflict arises, you will find yourself in one of three zones: the red zone, the yellow zone, or the green zone.
The red zone is when you find that one or both of you can no longer stay in control of your emotions.
You might be yelling, you might be making accusations, or you might be holding it all in. But it is definitely a time for a timeout.
By having an agreed upon signal or phrase, this lets your partner know that you need some time to cool down.
It also reassures your partner that the issue will be talked about, but later, when you've been able to get your emotions in check.
The yellow zone is when you feel things getting tense and there is a potential for damage to occur.
Having a signal or a phrase can quickly alert both of you to be careful in what you're saying, to be sensitive, and to listen.
Basically, it helps you remember to be respectful.
One way to show respect is to identify trigger words that can cause heated discussions to escalate. Use different words instead.
The green zone is when you're feeling good and you want to talk about the issue or finish a couple talk.
Make sure that you don't leave a couple talk feeling unfinished or with negative feelings. Be sure to say some positive things to affirm your partner and their relationship.
Whew, there was a lot of territory covered in that session.
I know, but it was all good information.
And if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for Couple Talk on the go at CoupleTalk.com. You can get short, helpful reminders and insights sent to you by text or email or both.
They seem to come at the right time. It's really kind of weird how timely they are.
Do that. Check out the Making It Real section of your workbook between now and next session. And we'll see you next time when we go through digging deeper during disagreements.
Catch you later.